Chapter 3. The boys were all arms and legs, gangly in the way that teenage boys are before the muscle comes in. Carson Jackson was a fair head with adolescent acne. He looked like his mother, who sat next to him, throwing her son poison arrows with her eyes. Milo Newcamp was short with scruffy hair and a long nose, and was accompanied by his father. Both parents were impatient to get the interviews over. The expressions were weary, conveying that the boys had been in trouble too many times before. Decker had placed them in one of the two interview rooms at the station house. It held a regular table and 6 chairs surrounded by unadorned walls painted off-white. The room did have a one-way mirror that had been installed 5 years ago. Decker had only been with the department for a little over a year, and all that time he never remembered anyone sitting on the other side while an interview was being conducted. Once the shoe prints had been taken off the teens' boots, Decker started the interview by asking them the basics: time, place, reason for being there on a school day, where they came from, where they were going. Then he went over his notes. So you both decided to skip school and go for a hike. It's not the first time they've been truant, Carson's mother interjected. Okay, Decker said, Mrs. Jackson. I like them to answer the questions. Once I'm done, and it shouldn't take too long, you can deal with your boy however you want. Let's just get it over with, Julia. Again, Mr. Newcamp frowned. We've both got better things to do. That's for certain, Julia muttered. Morons. Decker said, so you boys biked to the forest and started to hike around 11, leaving your bikes in a thicket off Milson Road. Again the boys nodded. Decker looked at his notes. And you weren't on any mapped trail? No, sir, Milo said, but we hiked the back country before. From where you started to where you ended up, it's about 15 minutes. Decker looked up. What took you so long? Milo's father chucked the back of his son's head with 2 fingers. Tell them what you were doing. They probably went hunting. No matter, it isn't hunting season, and it's dangerous to go shooting when you can't see the orange jackets, idiots. Mr. Newcamp, let me ask the question so we can all get going with the rest of our day, Decker said. So you found the body? Yes, sir. Milo answered both of them. And then what did you do? We couldn't get phone reception, so we turned around and went back to our bike and went home and called from there. Not home, Mr. Newcomb said. You went to the Arby's until school let out. Again he chucked his head. Ow, the boy exclaimed. Decker said, stop hitting him, okay? You're in the presence of the police. Newcomb looked down, another sour look on his face. Decker continued. Did either of you touch the body to see if it had a pulse? The boys shook their head. Milo said. His face was covered with snow. He wasn't moving. I didn't want to mess anything up. Decker leaned across the table. We didn't find anything on the body. Boys, no wallet, no cell phone, no pad, no backpack, and no personal identification. I paused. This isn't important, so don't lie. Did either of you take anything? The boys shook their heads emphatically and said no several times. Didn't go through his pockets, Decker said, because if you did, we would find your fingerprints. Not always the case, but the kids didn't know that. No way, Carson said. We just got the hell out of there. We ran back, sir, Ma said. I don't want nothing to do with a dead body. Yvonne Mastino came in and handed Decker a note. The boy's boot print matched the cast from the shoe prints in the snow. Okay, Decker said. I have what I need for now. You can pick up your hiking boots and go home. I might have a few more questions later on. With your parents' permission, I want to keep your rifles at the station house until hunting season begins. Good idea, Julia Jackson said. That's so unfair, Carson protested. Shut up, Carson. Decker, Julia said. I'll bring his in tomorrow. Ditto, Newcomb said. Better it's here than one of you shooting someone and going to jail for manslaughter, idiots. He started to hit his son's head, but stopped himself. Are we done? Decker nodded. The four of them got up and left. He turned off the tape recorder just as McAdams came into the room. Anything illuminating with the kids? Just stupid teenagers playing hooky. No one was in the zip speed office, but I got hold of the clerk and he looked up the numbered bike on the computer. It was rented by John Smith. A pseudonym, you think? Decker asked. I don't know about that. The Decker claims that no one rents without a driver's license left on file as security. So he got a false license with the name John Smith. Or his name is John Smith, McAdams stated. I've got one bit of news. The name might be fake, but the form that he filled out had his student ID number. According to that, he went to Needloft. Of the 5 colleges of upstate, Needloft was the smallest. It specialized in math, science, engineering, but it was still considered a liberal arts college rather than a technical institute like MIT or Caltech. Decker said, let's grab some flyers. We can start there. Question, have you told Rena that I'm in town? Yes. And it's okay? Yes, it's okay for some odd reason she likes you. Decker stood up. Let's go. Do you think the kids took anything from the crime scene, like a laptop or phone? They said no, and I believe them. You saw how tidy the pile was. Clothes neatly folded and stacked. If they did some rifling, the clothes would have been messed up. They could have straightened the clothes afterwards. McAdams, have you ever been in average teen boys' room? Meticulous is just not in their vocabulary. The 5 colleges of upstate were their own entities, with their own security and their own secretive methods of handling crime. The offences usually centered around students getting drunk and getting into trouble. There was occasional crossover, usually when the incident was too serious for the colleges to handle. Such was the case last year when a student at Littleton College, a senior named Angeline Morrow, was found murdered in an off-campus residence. The college have been more than happy to punt to the local police. Greenboro wasn't used to dealing with big city crime, and the town hadn't had a brutal whodunit in years. It was Greenberry's good fortune that Decker had signed up 6 months before the case broke, having recently hung his shield as a detective lieutenant for LAPD. The architectural style of the 5 colleges were as different as the institutions. Duxbury was the oldest and the biggest, constructed during the mid-1800s with its imposing limestone and brick buildings. The Women's College, Clarion, was built in the 20s, cleaner lines and more intimate buildings. Post-war, Morse McKinley specialized in government, international affairs, and economics. It resembled a dingbat 50s apartment building that had metasized into a college dormitory. Littleton was the eco-friendly fine arts and theatre college where Decker McAdams had spent the majority of last winter investigating an art heist that had turned deadly. Needs a loft architect was brutal 60s design, when ideas and thought reigned supreme and aesthetics ranked indesirably with the military-industrial complex. It was a block-long rectangular bunk of brick and brownstone with small square windows. Decker had never been inside its hallowed halls. There hasn't been any occasion for a visit. It was almost 8 in the evening by the time he and McAdams arrived at the college. The temperature was in the low 30s with a breeze that was dry enough to chap the lips and sting the eyes. A black starry sky canopied the white lawns of the sprawling campuses. The administration offices were closed, and it would probably take a number of phone calls to get them to open. Since the college was small, 600 students total, 6 dormitories, it was easier to pass around flyers and see if any identification could be had by facial recognition. The residents were named after 20th century scientists Fermi Hall, Bohr Hall, Einstein Hall, Planck Hall, Goddard Hall, and Marie Curie Hall, lest anyone think that Curie was referring to her husband, Pierre. The first dorm that came across was Planck Hall. It was 2 stories of dreary functional brick devoid of charm and style. Since neither Decker nor McAdams had access keys, they knocked on an unmanned glass door and, of course, got no response because it was doubtful that anyone heard them. A minute later, a student swiped her resident card, and the 2 detectives piggybacked on the open door, coming in after she had bounced up the stairs. The first thing that came into view was a Volkswagen Jetta sitting in the foyer. How they got a full-size car in a lobby was anyone's guess. Behind the driver's seat was a steel rover with a sign around his neck, dubbed him Rupert. He wore a beret, sunglasses, and driving gloves. The students coming in and out of the dorm walked around the car as if it was a completely natural phenomenon. The rest of the lobby was the usual college mess. Used bottles of beers and spirit, discarded red cups that had held beers and spirits, pizza boxes, stale French fries, and other assorted old takeout, overflowing trash cans and outerwear strewn about the floor. Since there wasn't much fresh air circulating other than door opening and closing, the garbage reeked. Phew! McAdams waved his hand in front of his nose. Poor Rupert. Should we start with him, since he seemed to be the eyes and ears of Planck? Tyler bent over and showed the flyer of John Doe's postmortem to the robot. You know this guy? He paused. It might help to take off the shade, student. Decker smiled. Let's start upstairs and work our way down. They climbed to the second level. Most of the doors were open, and the space was a cacophony of music, human voices, and mechanical noises that sounded like hammering and drilling. They started on one side, and it didn't take long for John Doe to be identified by Commodore Butcher, a senior with a dual major in maths and mechanical engineering. Oh shit! Butcher stared at his picture, his mouth agape. Is that Eli Wolf? He had pronounced the name Eli Long I. Decker said, spell it for me. Butcher complied. He was short in stature with black straight hair and a dark brown complexion. Sitting cross-legged in his bed, he had headphones around his neck and surrounded by 2 laptops, a phone, and a tablet. What's happening? Is Eli a friend of yours? Kind of. Eli really doesn't have friends per se. He's kind of schizoid, but that's more the norm here than not. So how well do you know him? In a small school, and even smaller math department, we've taken some classes together. Now that we're seniors, we have different advisors, so I don't see him as often. We're both busy. I pause. My God, he looks dead. He's dead? Yes, he's deceased. This is a post-mortem picture. God, that's totally fucked up. The boy seemed genuinely shocked. What happened? We're still evaluating, Decker said. What can you tell me about him? Not much. We weren't like the best of friends, but we certainly knew each other. What was his major? McAdams asked. Theoretical maths. Butcher's jaw muscles bulged. I believe he was doing some postgrad work on Fourier analysis and Fourier transforms. Decker turned to McAdams. Any idea what that is? Not a clue. Tyler looked at Butcher. Please explain in simple English, if possible. Fourier did work on temperature gradients like about 300 years ago. Heat travels from hottest point to coldest point, and how fast it travels is dependent on the material. The way to explain this mathematically was figured out by a guy named Fourier. He took complex waves that makes up like things like temperature gradients and broke them into simpler sine waves. You guys know what a sine wave is, right? Tucker said, I believe trigonometry was a prerequisite for Harvard. You went to Harvard? Butcher asked. He did. Decker pointed to McAdams. Amplitude, frequency, and phase, Tyler said. Butcher laughed. Do you know about eigenvalves? Nope, but I know enough first year taught law to sue in almost anyone. You're in law school? This is an unfortunate case. Yes, McAdams pointed to Decker. He, however, is a full-fledged attorney. About 30 years ago, Decker said. Can you give me a layman's definition of an eigenvalve? It's easy to give you a mathematical explanation. It involves matrices and non-zero vectors, which means nothing to almost everyone in the universe except weirdos like me. The point is, all of this stuff starts out theoretical, but it is very practical. Has very practical applications. Bradshaw looked up. Eli had a great mind. He could picture complex maths like gradients, vectors, and matrices in his head. It was a gift. What happened to him? Was it an accident? Why would you think it was an accident? It wasn't an accident. This time, Butcher seemed genuinely stunned. He committed suicide? I'm not sure, Decker said. Did he seem depressed lately? Not to me. If anything, he seemed okay. I know his thesis was going well. It sounds like you know Eli better than you think. Everyone in our class knew about Eli. He was exceptional. Who was his thesis advisor? McAdams asked. Theo Rosa. He's chairman of the department. Eli also worked with Dr. Belford and Dr. Farraga. He could have worked with anyone. He had the entire maths departments in awe. Would you have phone numbers for any of them? Hold on, I'll see if they have anything listed in the faculty roster. It took him a few minutes to find what he was looking for. Nothing for Rosa, the office phone numbers. I have Dr. Belford's cell number. She's my advisor. First name? Decker asked. Katrina Belford. He recited the digits out loud. I hope that helps. It's a start, Decker said. You have no idea who he might have hung out with. He didn't hang out with anyone. He was always in the library working on something that no one else understood. He had to eat, McAdams said. Ever seen him in the dining hall? Sure, sitting alone most of the time. Sometimes he was sitting with a group of people, but I think that had more to do with the availability of chairs than anything social. Or it could be that they were picking his brain. He was a helpful guy. He thought for a moment. You might want to contact Malin. They sort of hung out. Is Malin male or female? Female. Not that it mattered to Eli or to Malin, for that matter. She's pretty much a loner herself. Katrina Belford is her advisor as well, so I see her occasionally at meetings. So you both have the same advisor? Yes, Malin. Ari Wiesberg and me. What is Malin's last name? Decker asked. Euler, spelt like the mathematician but pronounced Euler instead of Euler. I think she has a distant relationship to the Great One. Where can we find Malin? Decker asked. She's in Marie Curie. You want her cell number? That would be helpful. Patrick gave it to them. He shook his head. God, this is horrible. You've got to take a minute to absorb it. Is there anything else? Yes, and this is important, Decker said. You have some identification out John Doe as Eli Wolf. Are you sure it's him? Almost positive. But if you want further corroboration, keep passing flyers around. First, we're going to talk to Melon Euler. If she's identified him as Eli Wolf, then we'll start doing notifications. His parents, shit, that's bad. I'm asking you to sit on this until we've contacted them. Do you happen to know where we can contact Eli's parents? Maybe there's a family phone number in the student directory. I don't think there's a family phone number because I don't think there's a family phone. I seem to recall that Eli's Wolf family is Amish. Chapter 4. This time, the vehicle sitting in the lobby was a 1970 bronze Cadillac Eldorado convertible. The dummy, again wearing shades, sat behind the wheel, costume in complete livery. When McAdams offered Malin Euler the flyer, she looked at the paper but refused to hold it. She sat cross-legged on her bed, her face revealing nothing. She wasn't much of a person if physical substance were the criterion. She was elfin, small, painfully thin, heart-shaped face, with pixie short blonde hair and deep blue eyes. She wore a sleeveless blouse even though the room wasn't hot, showing off her stick arms and denim shorts, hotel-type slippers on her feet. Decker said, "Do you know him?" A nod of the head. Her eyes suddenly watered. They went from the flyer to McAdams' face, then back to the flyer. "Who is he?" Decker said. Her focus was still on the flyer. "He's dead?" "Yes." Decker waited, but no response came. "Who is he?" "Eli. Last name? Wolf. Elijah Wolf." Decker turned to McAdams. "2 IDs and that's good enough for me." To Malone. "Where did he live, Malone?" "Which dorm?" "Goddard Hall." "Do you know the suite number?" 25. "Does he have a roommate?" "He's single. He's a senior. Most seniors have singles." She looked at her lap. She whispered, "What happened?" "That's what we're trying to figure out. When did it happen?" "I'm not sure of the exact time. We found him this afternoon in a remote section of the woods off the Elwood exit from the highway." "Any idea why he might have been there?" "None. I don't even know where Elwood is." She continued to stare at her lap as she talked. "Were you and Eli friends?" "We had similar academic interests." "That doesn't preclude friendship." She looked up and then down. "We talked research." "What kind of research?" "Math." "How often do you two speak?" "All the time." "But you don't consider him a friend?" "I don't have friends." A quick glance to McAdams, and then she returned her eyes to her knees. Another tear escaped from her left eye. She brushed it away. "But it doesn't lessen the pain of losing him." "He's mine." She spoke in hush. "It's so horrible." Another tear followed by another. Decker handed her a box of Kleenex. When was the last time you saw Eli?" "Yesterday." "What time?" "1 in the afternoon. We met for lunch at the dining hall." How did that go?" "The usual." "I have no idea what the usual is, Malon." "We talked math. Anything different about Eli's behavior?" "No." "Did he seem upset or depressed?" "Not at all." "Preoccupied?" "No." Eyes went to Decker, to McAdams, and then downward. "I'm not good at judging emotional state, but to me he seemed fine, maybe even a little upbeat. Things were going well with his thesis." "That much I know." "Did you see him regularly?" "Yes, at least twice a week." "So who called whom to meet for lunch?" "I never call anyone. We text." "Before I forget, what's his cell number?" The girl recited the digits robotically to McAdams. Decker, "Can you call the number?" "Already on it." Decker returned his attention to the girl. "Who texts whom?" "I text him. I was stuck on something and asked him to take a look at my work." McAdams hung up from the call. Voicemail, Decker said. "Disconnected and there's no new number." This was consistent with suicide. The kid was checking out. Decker said, "What's your research?" Her eyes slowly lifted to the face. It was fractals. Decker asked McAdams, "Any idea what a fractal is?" "I do, as a matter of fact," McAdams said. "They're repeating patterns found in nature. I have no idea what that means." Tyler scrunched his forehead. "Suppose you have a 3-leaf clover and you examine one of the leaves of the clover and discover it's lobed into 3 sections and the lobes look like the clover in miniature. And then you look further at one of those lobes and it's also in 3 sections, etc., etc., etc." He looked at Malone for confirmation. "More or less correct," she said. "And that's what you're studying?" Decker asked the girl. "No, I was working with the mathematics of fractals and the theory of roughness. My interests have morphed into Fourier analysis and transforms, which is what Elijah Wolf was studying," McAdams said. Eli had changed his focus of interest a few times, but yes, we were using the same mathematical formulas, although we were doing very different things. When we spoke, he was mostly helping me, not the other way around. So you don't know exactly what he was studying. Something using Fourier or transforms. Melon wiped a tear from her eyes. I wish I paid more attention, but like I said, he was helping me. And Dr. Rosa was his advisor, Decker said. Yes, that shows you how brilliant he was. Dr. Rosa only has one student per grade at the most. He's the chairman of the department, so he could have had his pick, but he wouldn't pick me if I had been as smart as Eli. He hates women. He does? Just ask Dr. Belfont. She's my advisor. Decker nodded. Is there anything else you can tell me about Elijah Ward? He has a real gift. The tears were back. He'll be missed terribly. Melon, do you know anything about his family? No. I was told he was brought up by Amish Mennonite. Oh, Decker paused. You knew he was Mennonite? Yes. So you knew something about him, she answered with a shrug. Decker said, did he ever talk about his background, his evolution from Mennonite to math genius? He didn't speak of his past much, if at all, Melon lowered her eyes. I didn't pry. I wish I had. Okay, Decker smoothed his mustache. So why did he tell you about his religion? What was the context, if you remember? Of course I remember. He taught me how to play rook and chronicle. He told me they were Mennonite card games and that he had come from that community. Anything else other than how to play games? No, nothing else. So you don't know where geographically he's from? No. You didn't ask him? No. She bit her lower lip. His accent seemed local. He had an accent. By accent, I mean his speech pronunciations and patterns. I have a good ear for that. By the way you talk, it's obvious you're from the West, but you have a slight southern twang. If I was to guess, I'd say Eastern Louisiana or Western Florida, Gainesville, Florida, smack in the middle of the state. But my mother grew up close to Louisiana. McAdams broke in after looking up information on the phone. Wow, lots of Amish in upstate. They come here because farming land is cheaper than in Lancaster. He looked at Melon. Are you sure he wasn't Amish? He said Mennonite, Melon said. McAdams was still retrieving info on his smartphone. There are a few small Mennonite communities upstate. Decker said Mennonites are more modern than Amish. There are a good chance that his family has electricity and a phone. I'll get on it. McAdams said. Decker turned to the young woman. I'm going to need to notify his parents, Melon. Please don't say anything to anyone until I do that very unpleasant task. Can you sit on this until I do? Of course, I don't talk to many people anyway. I don't gossip. Decker handed Melon his card. Well, if you hear gossip or you think of anything else, no matter how small, please give me a call. Melon stared at the card. Finally, her spindly fingers took it. Decker said, thank you. McAdams said, sir, can I have a minute alone with Mr. Euler? The request took Decker by surprise. Of course. As soon as Decker left the room, McAdams stowed his smartphone and said, okay, so where do I know you from? Melon said to him, what makes you think you know me? Obviously, I don't know you, but we met before. I don't remember, but you do. You keep staring at me. So where? Phillips. McAdams was confused. Really? Really? Sorry, I don't remember the circumstance. You're a lot younger than I am. And I kind of kept to myself. Not always. Did I insult you or something? I've insulted many people in my day. On the contrary, you gave me the sagest advice that anyone has ever given me. Now that's a switch, McAdams paused. Now I'm curious. He waited. Please? I had just started ninth grade. I was a year younger than anyone else. And of course, I was being bullied as usual. Ellen, Harold, Mackenzie, Gregory, and Misha Greenwood. I know Mackenzie, her brother, and she grew up around the corner from me. Nice piece of work, both of them. Actually, what did I do? It was after they stole my phone for the third time. I was crying, and of course they were making fun of me for crying. And you came along and said, Mackenzie, stop torturing her. She gave you some sass, but there was no bite behind it. They left, but I was still crying. Adams furrowed his brow. I can't imagine anyone getting sympathy from me. I didn't. Okay, that's consistent. I said to you, all I want for them is to like me. I was sobbing by the time. All I want to do is fit in. And you know what you said? I haven't a clue. You said they'll never like you and you'll never fit in. McAdams laughed. Okay, that sounds like me. But then you said, and here's the wise part, you said, but if you concentrate on your studies, you can make something of yourself. And while they still won't like you, maybe they'll respect you. Wow, I said that? You did. Completely out of character. You must have caught me at a weak moment. Madeline's lip curled in a semi-smile. When you walked away, I asked your name and you said it didn't matter, and I found out your name anyway. Last I heard, you were off to Harvard. That happened, and now you're a cop? that happened as well. McAdams checked his watch. I need to get back to my boss. He picked up his briefcase. I'm glad things worked out for you, Melon. And if it's any consolation, Mackenzie has been in rebats twice. It means nothing. I don't waste my time figuring out how to exact revenge. Then you're one step ahead of me. He pointed to the card still in her hand. Do you call him if you think of anything? Malin said, how did he die? There's still an ongoing part of the investigation. Did he die alone? McAdams smiled, tinged with sadness. Malone, we all die alone.